Thank you so much for joining today. And I just want to welcome you to the webinar, launching a business and building a brand. So first, we'll start with some introductions. I am Kamaka Martin. I am the founder of Better Insight. It's a consulting company. And I'm joined by Jocelyn Thompson, who is also going to be the panelist on this webinar today. So just a little bit about each of us before we get started. So as I mentioned, I'm the founder of Better Insight, which is a consulting company that's focused on providing leadership training and coaching to new, seasoned, and aspirational female managers. I focus on building authentic relationships with women to help them understand and navigate the professional challenges they face. So I provide one-on-one coaching, and also I lead a quarterly virtual workshop series called Lead the Way Positively, where attendees learn how to become skilled in professional self-advocacy. We also have Jocelyn. She is a human resources professional who founded WorkVision Consulting in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. we know how that goes if you joined us for our last session. But WorkVision Consulting is a boutique HR consulting company that focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is a values-based company striving to create a new way of work that allows people to be their authentic selves and achieve peak performance. So today we're going to focus on how to launch a business and build a brand in the HR consulting space, and how to move from a business idea to developing a business plan, launching the business, and what it's like to build a brand that sets you apart from other companies with similar offerings. I'll be asking Jocelyn a few questions, but definitely feel free to add questions to the Q&A, and we'll be sure to weave those questions in during the discussion. So definitely use that Q&A feature to ask your questions. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. As some of you know, really excited about today's discussion. I think we were chatting earlier. We were both so looking forward to it. We both woke up yesterday like, is it today? But here we are, and just really excited to have the opportunity to chat with you, both as entrepreneurs, both as women, both who are really trying to lead with authenticity. So how about you tell us about your professional background prior to starting your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 14 years of experience after college, where I was a people manager and then also human resources experience. And so I went from being a people manager to working in human resources. And I started my HR career 7 years ago. I have a lot of different areas where I have experience in HR, different industries. A lot of my experience is in hospitality. I've also worked in manufacturing and education, all kinds of different experiences. And so, with that, I've also been a consultant. I've been a somebody who is a generalist, and I've also been a specialist in some of my roles. So yeah, that's kind of what I've done within my career. And I really never thought I was going to launch a business, but here we are, and I'm really excited to talk about it.
Awesome. So can you provide an overview of WorkVision Consulting and the services you provide?
Absolutely. So we're a human resources consulting company, and with that, we really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there's a lot of different services that I provide for my clients, and every service that I provide is really tailored to the client that I'm working with. So there's so many different things, but in particular with the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, that falls into 3 different buckets. The first one being a DE&I audit. That's where I go into a client, a company, and I look at all their current systems and practices and procedures and determine how, where they're at with their DE&I work. We also do climate surveys to see, how the employees are feeling about all of it. The second piece is DE&I training, and I have a specific training called DE&I 101 that really sets the foundation for diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And that one is a training that can be tailored either to management at a company, or it can be, a lot of companies are wanting all of their employees to be trained on DE&I. So that, again, is one that's tailored to the company, depending on the size and industry and all those things. And then the last piece of DE&I work is compensation equity audits. So that's going in and looking at pay scales and market data and determining if the company's paying, how they're paying compared to the market, but also how they're paying within the company, and seeing if that pay is equitable based on, of course, looking at things like gender and race, and are those impacting pay decisions, things like that. And, like I said, there's other things that I do as well. So for example, I have a client that is having me work on their performance review system right now, and setting up strategies around performance management and looking at that from a DE&I lens, and how do we make that process the most equitable it can be, using core competencies and things like that. So really, if you're somebody who might be interested in my services, definitely reach out, because it's something that I'm talking to clients and adapting my business as I find out what the biggest needs are out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've talked about this. My company recently started a DE&I task force, and that whole process of identifying a consultant and figuring out what is the best next step to take. I mean, a lot of times, we're just kind of going it alone. It's something that, we want to do, and many of us are wearing multiple hats, doing our day jobs, but at the same time, really trying to be effective and affect change by being a part of the task force. But it's great that there are very structured processes that can be applied, because I do think that it does require that level of focus. And so it's great to hear the different offerings that you provide, because every organization is in a different phase. So, from that perspective, it's great that, you're working with both the mature as well as those who are, kind of getting things off the ground, and helping them build a framework to be successful at implementing, DEI throughout the fabric of the organization. And I think that that's sort of the part that, at least for me, that I'm always very passionate about. So moving into, what was the impetus for you to start WorkVision Consulting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've worked in consulting, in HR consulting before, for a company that provided those services. And when I had that experience, I didn't think that I really wanted to ever do my own business as an HR consultant. And so, at the time, I would say kind of early last summer, I started thinking, I was in my full-time role, and I started thinking I was ready for something else. And thinking that I would just start job searching, just do the traditional job search. And with, wanting to find my next thing, I started talking to people. I have some friends who've started their own businesses, and then some friends who connected to me with other people who'd started HR consulting companies. And in talking to people, I started to get inspired again that this might be something that I want to do. And so, it was just, I don't know exactly what clicked, but I did have somebody that was like, I do HR consulting, but I don't do the DE&I piece, and I'd really love to be able to refer my clients to you. And so that was, something that pushed me to think about, okay, this is something I'm really passionate about. It's really picking up steam right now, with the unfortunate murder of George Floyd and the protests that followed. It seemed like that was really a turning point for the country. I feel like partially because of COVID, and that companies are having to take notice of people's personal lives, everybody working at home. And there's just been an interesting shift with all of these things that have happened. So yeah, I think with everything shifting, it just got me thinking of, okay, maybe I wanna think about this again and try it again. And I started working on it and started getting excited about the ideas that I had and how I wanted to run a business, and what my work vision is for how work should be.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's, always interesting is to sort of like, your that focus of someone being able to say, hey, I think that you would be a great candidate for running your own, HR consultancy focusing on DEI. Was there something that you were already doing that kind of let that person know, okay, well, hey, this is something that I'm interested in doing, and I'm already great at it. Like, what was your past experience in DEI like that made this person say, hey, hey, Jocelyn, this is something I really think you should lean into?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the people that I've had support from as I've been going into this are people that I've worked with in the past. So at companies that I've been at. And even before I started focusing my HR work on DE&I, my focus has always been employee centered versus company centered. And I feel like that is different than how a lot of people approach HR and a lot of companies approach HR. And so for me, it's about really taking care of the employee. And I think that's what pushed me into the DE&I part, because I realized that our systems as we have them set up now in the majority of companies aren't taking care of everybody the same way or in a way that supports everyone. And so, I think because of that philosophy that I've had for a really long time, that's what got people to say, I think you should do this on your own. Because when you are inside a company, I mean, there are really amazing companies out there that completely support the employees and are very employee centered, but I don't think that's the majority of them. And so I think as an HR person, if you do have that outlook, you're often pushing back, and you're kind of up against leadership who's saying, no, we've got to do this for the company, this is better. And I think just having that philosophy is really what had so much support behind what I've wanted to do, and people saying things like, keep breaking the mold, keep trying to do things differently. And that's been my philosophy.
That's awesome. I definitely, I think that that's great, and it always is very interesting that companies are seemingly more open to like having that very pointed feedback from a consultant versus sort of internal. So I feel like you are doing exactly what you're setting out to do to affect change, and knowing that that's one way to do that. That's really admirable. So can you tell us about what the process was like for you, moving from the idea and vision for WorkVision Consulting to actually launching the business?
Yeah, so it was all kind of hand in hand, to be honest. I mean, when I started formulating the idea, it didn't take long for me to start putting stuff down on paper. I'm one of those people that I love making lists and I love having a plan. And so when I started thinking this might be something I want to do, even before I'd made the decision to really go for it, I started writing things down and started brainstorming. And that led me to working on my business plan. And so, the business plan was such an important part of my launch. And that's even something that I plan to build out even more and more as the company grows. But with that and putting all those things down on paper, I would say it took me about 3.5 months to develop everything before I launched live. And I launched live in mid-September of last year. And once I launched, I still continue even to this day to be developing things. And I think that's something that every entrepreneur, business owner is continually developing their business and improving things. And so I think I'll be doing that for quite some time as I'm moving forward and growing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, having to go through that process as well. I think the other side for me, I probably, although in my day-to-day life, like I'm very organized, it was very different for me from the perspective of taking what was in my mind and actually trying to convert that to something So, I like the fact that, you were able to sort of put pen to paper, but, there are other, means of going about that as well. In my scenario, I did hire a consultant to sort of assist me with just kind of taking what was in my brain and kind of formulating it, putting on paper. But I think that that sense of, taking that initiative. So did you have help outside of, how you went through the sort of creative process of putting pen to paper? Were there other people who helped or inspired how you developed the business plan?
Yes, I had so much help. I don't think anyone can launch a business completely by themselves. I, just had so much support from my community. And like I mentioned, there were people in my network who referred me to other people who had started their own consulting companies. And that was really helpful just to see what they had done and maybe, some tips that things that didn't work or what really worked well. And the other piece was in building out my company, which is a very values-based company. I wanted to be able to communicate those values out to potential customers and really just out to the world. And doing a blog was a big part of how I've done that. And so the number of people who have helped me edit that blog, given me ideas for that blog, brainstormed with me, there's just so many people that have helped with that, which has been invaluable. I also, a big part for me was the visual brand. And I knew that right from the beginning, I wanted to hire a graphic designer to do the logo and some other branding pieces. And so Eric Lamb was my graphic designer. And if you're interested in him, he's on my website under the gratitude section. But he just did such an awesome job working with me and really understanding how the values should impact the visuals of the company and how those kind of tie together. And so with developing that, not only did he help me, just with a simple logo, but also things like letterhead and presentation templates and putting all those things together so the brand is consistent across the board, across social media, when I'm talking to clients, when I'm putting together decks, all that stuff was really super helpful. And then my photographer too, is really amazing. A good friend, Marcus, he's also on my website. So if you're interested in anyone that I've used for visual stuff, I usually will list them there. But so many people that I wouldn't want to name anyone because I'm sure I would leave someone out. Just the number of people that have also done interviews for the blog, things like that.
That's awesome. I love the idea of the gratitude page, just like that, where you're able to just kind of show like who's helping you sort of behind the scenes. I think that that's great because I'm sure many of them are also small business owners and, looking to grow their business. So it's like a great way to, to give back and, give them an opportunity to help others as well. So definitely enjoying. I really like that idea. And it also threads nicely with the putting the person first, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, there are people behind all of these businesses and really giving them an opportunity to, to show what they're capable of doing and how they've helped you. So that's awesome. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you came across during the whole process?
The thing that surprised me most, the challenge that I really wasn't expecting, was actually coming up with a name for the company, which just sounds like such a simple thing, but I was really surprised with how many names were taken, for one, and wanting to have something sort of unique and original, but also wanting something that really represented my brand and what the company stood for. So for me, when I found WorkVision, I felt like that talked about how the company is about having a different way of working and really helping to change systems so that we work the way that's the best for everyone, having equitable systems, things like that. That was really hard to come up with. And the funny thing even about that name is, although it is a fairly unique name as far as businesses within the US, there was previously a business called WorkVision Consulting that I found later on after I had come up with that name. And it was actually a woman who did kind of similar work where she was working to elevate women's careers. And I mean, this was years ago. She's since retired and no longer uses the name, but I thought that was really cool. It almost made me feel like I was continuing this legacy that she had started by, doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work with the name of WorkVision Consulting. So
That is awesome.
yeah, I tried to reach
That's
out to her, but she hasn't responded. So, um, but yeah, I would love to talk to her. I think it's really neat that she was doing that work. I think about 30 years ago when she started. So,
I'd like to raise my hand to moderate that conversation, please.
I'll keep trying to find her. But yeah, so
Awesome.
that was one thing that I was surprised about. And I spent, countless hours on the phone with friends just talking about different names and seeing people's responses and things like that. Another piece that was also challenging was figuring out how much to charge for my services. And that was another thing I hadn't thought about, that I mean, I think it briefly, of course, is going to cross your mind, but I hadn't realized how difficult it would be to quote out projects. And that's just something that, in the consulting work I had done before, it was a very different model than what I'm doing now. And so the way that things were billed at that company really didn't translate to the way that I'm billing. And, I was able to figure it out. And there's some great tools online where you can put in how much you're hoping to make, and, all these different factors. And as, someone who's operating your own business, you have to pay taxes, you have to pay for all the overhead. There's a lot of things to think about. And it's much more difficult than just thinking, what was I making before? So that was something, that I wasn't fully prepared to figure out. And, I eventually did, but I think that the third thing I would say that has been a challenge is that every week I'm learning something new. And a lot of times it's having to teach myself a new skill or a new program. And I, I knew that there would be a lot of learning in starting a new business, but I didn't realize how much. And I mean, I think it's great. I think it's really challenging me and pushing me every week. And the biggest resource for that has definitely been YouTube. You can it's great, the age of the internet, we can just look anything up on a YouTube video and learn something new, but there's just been a lot of learning. So that was something that popped up that I wasn't 100% prepared for, I think.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. I actually had a conversation recently, the beginning of this year, kind of setting goals for my business and trying to figure out like how I'm going to continue to grow. And that conversation about, having, a vision for how much you want to make, how much you're going to price, it almost feels a little uncomfortable, but it's like, to your point, it's like you have taxes, you have overhead, like there are things that you actually need to be thinking about. And it's like, I am not like an accountant, so like I don't really know what that translates to, but I think that that's a part of the excitement of it, right? And learning all of the different tools. And I definitely I'm always up in the middle of the night like, okay, well, how do I fix this? I need to do this one thing on my website, but I don't know how to do the one thing. So definitely the internet is your friend where that's concerned. So how has your business evolved since you initially launched?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. I mean, every month it's a little bit different. So I think the services that I'm offering, I knew that I wanted to focus on DE&I, and I knew that I wanted to do some kind of audit, but I've changed the way that looks based on what the needs of my customer has been. And I think a really important thing about starting your own business is always listening to the customer. And that has been a challenge, because then it's been like, well, how do I price this versus this other thing? Because it is slightly different and all of my offerings are different. And it makes it hard because I can't just say, here's one price sheet because this is what I do for everyone. But I do think that's something that's valuable and maybe sets me apart a little bit from other businesses, that I really do tailor everything. I'm not just giving you a cookie cutter approach. But, with that, I think, yeah, some of the other things that have evolved, I mean, definitely my marketing and communication. Some of the things that I set out to do, I realized maybe weren't 100% that I couldn't do them all myself. And so I've had to kind of pick pieces. I feel really good about my marketing, but it's just evolved as I've gone, and I've had to build on what I've been able to do. The great thing about the marketing though is that every week that I'm doing it, it gets easier. So that's been really nice. I have a newsletter that I do weekly. And when I first was putting that together, it would take me a whole day to get content and figure out what I was going to do and edit it in the template. And now I have it all set up, and I can just plug and play, and I plan out, for months what the newsletter content is sort of going to look like, and I plug things in. So yeah, that's something that's changed too, just the ability to do things a little more quickly, but having to pull back on all the expectations I had for myself.
Yeah, no, I think that that's really key, right? Being able to be nimble and adjusting as you start to engage with your clients and figuring out what works. Based on the market that you're attracting. So definitely. So talking about branding and marketing. When you think about your brand and how you market to new clients, what is something that sets you apart from other companies with similar offerings?
Yeah, I think I've definitely done some research on what are the other DE&I consultants in my area doing. A lot of them are bigger. They have a team, which is a goal of mine. It's something, I want to grow this business and have a team of consultants, but for right now, it's just me. But with those companies, there is a lot of just pre-subscribed content. And I think that there can be some value in that, but in general, when we look at DE&I, we can't just stick a training, check a box, and be done. And so for me, I spend a lot of time with my clients and even getting to know the employees. So my goal is not just to come in and do one training and leave. It really is to do the audit, do the training, recommend a strategic roadmap, possibly even help implement that stuff, do the pay equity audit, do all that stuff for the clients and get to know those individual employees and have those employees get to know me and trust me. Because I think one of the things with DE&I work is that it can be hard for people. It's difficult subjects to talk about. And if we're asking employees, if they're taking a survey or if I'm doing an interview with them, I want them to feel like I'm going to listen to them. I care about what they have to say. It's not just somebody coming in and trying to get the information and get out. It's really somebody who is invested in this being successful. I don't want to go in and just have a program that doesn't stick. I mean, we've seen so many companies try to do DE&I right, and then you hear about a lawsuit. You hear about microaggressions happening in their organization. And so, maybe some of what they're doing is working, but it's clearly not 100% working. And that's what we want to really fix the systems and make systemic change in these areas. So I think that's what sets me apart from a lot of the people doing this work. And a lot of people are doing the work right too. I don't want to say that I'm the only one that has the answer. That's not the case at all. There's so many amazing DE&I professionals out there, but that's what I do differently from some of the big consultant groups.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I think that that's a great approach. I mean, I think the culture of an organization and understanding, what their, legacy challenges have been and, how you can incorporate things that will actually speak to that organization is really going to be key. Like the demographics that you're working with. I always say, if you're dealing with a company that's, primarily regionally in one location, their issues are going to be different from multi-regional organizations. And depending on the size. So all of those things are really key. And I love, 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 this is my my phrase, the interested versus the invested, really being invested, and that actually shines through in the way that you communicate. Especially, having gone through the process where I've interviewed multiple DEI consultants and understanding, the difference between those things and how that resonates when someone is just sort of interested in just providing you a cookie cutter solution versus investing and being invested in the company being successful at implementing a long-term plan. So we talked a little bit about, your marketing and branding. So what are some of the tools? You talked about your newsletter, blogging, that you've used when marketing your business.
Yeah, so for me, the number one thing that I knew was important was paying a graphic designer from the beginning and making sure that that branding was all set before I launched the business. Once I had all of that in place, there are a lot of tools that I use, and just to note, I don't get paid by any of these companies. I just like using them. So one of the big ones that I really recommend to people is Canva. I use Canva for, all kinds of things, social media, things that I put in my newsletter. And that's just a tool where you can put in graphics and photos and text and create ads for social media postings. I used it for everything that we did for this webinar. It's such a great tool. Another big one that I use is Unsplash. That's, Canva has some free photography that you can use, but Unsplash is a great one that has a lot. And then more recently, I've been really focused on trying to make sure that everything on my website, as well as with videos, is, accessible to everyone. So looking at things like closed captions and doing transcripts for the videos that I am posting. And so with that, I've been using Temi.com, and there's a lot of different ones out there, but that's one that seems to be working pretty well for me to get transcripts from when I do interviews, as well as creating closed captions for those videos. So those are just, a few of the things that I use. Obviously, my blog is on my website. I built my website myself. So I had a photographer that I paid and a graphic designer that I paid, but I was able to do my website with very little technological skills. No programming or anything. I used Squarespace, and it was really just a plug and play website. So I highly recommend that. And then also my newsletter, right now I'm using MailChimp. There's a lot of services out there for newsletters, but the great thing about using a service provider instead of just sending a newsletter through email is that you're able to send to that same audience over and over and do targeted things based on what people click on and what people's interests are. So you can actually take segments of your audience and send specific things to that audience. Whether, for me, I will say, is this person a small business owner? Are they a human resources professional? What category do they fit in, and what types of email information would they like? Yeah, so those are just some of the things. There's so many resources, and one of the things about starting the business is just learning about all these different tools. And I've been lucky to have lots of people to ask for help. But if anyone is on this call and has questions about different tools or is trying to compare things, I'm definitely more than willing to chime in with my opinion on what I like and what hasn't worked for me.
Those are definitely great tools. I can say that I was using Canva this morning. So definitely great applications. And like you said earlier, just like finding the time and having to learn all of those things. When you're an entrepreneur, there's so many, you have to wear so many hats. But I definitely agree with you that you do end up with a sort of an amalgamation of different applications that you can utilize. We do have a question. So, what is the best accounting software that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I ended up deciding on QuickBooks, and there were a lot of accounting softwares that I looked at, and my two top ones that I was deciding between were Zoho and QuickBooks. I personally ended up using QuickBooks because it has been around longer and it's a bigger company. And my only concern with Zoho was, wanting to make sure that it wasn't a company that got bought out and then everything changed. And I didn't think that would happen with QuickBooks. And I also knew just a lot of people are familiar with QuickBooks. So when I talked to my tax accountant, that system, I mean, both Zoho and QuickBooks will give you access for your accountant, which is really nice. They give you like a little user that you don't have to pay extra for. But with that, I knew that my accountant was familiar with QuickBooks, and that was why I made that choice. It was a little pricier than Zoho. So, if you're comparing different ones, those are the top two that I would recommend.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So now thinking about, it's been, several months, and, you've been in the space for a while, but if you could go back to the beginning, and give yourself one piece of advice, what would you say?
It's interesting because I don't think I would change much for how I did things. And I think that's just because, I think the learning experience and the making mistakes is really important. I didn't have any, you know, business breaking mistakes that set me really far back or cost me a lot of money. So, with that all being said, I think what I would have told myself at the very beginning is just go for it. I had a lot of trepidation around starting the business. And, I was so used to job searching when I was looking for a new career that my instinct was just to continue doing that. So at first, while I was starting the business, I was also job searching. And I had a few jobs that I was interviewing for, and none of those ended up working out, which I think was a good thing because I ended up launching the business. But eventually, I had a career coach that I was working with last year, and she asked me that question: what advice would you give? She said, if you knew your business would be successful next year, what advice would you come back and give yourself now? And I said, to stop job searching. And it was really just me not having the confidence to go all in. And it was, I think, taking away from the focus of going all in with starting the business. So at that point, I took my future self's advice and I stopped job searching and I went all in. And I'm really glad that I did that because I think that, it really was the right move as much as I had hesitation around starting the business. And I'm glad I did it.
Well, in the same vein, I mean, we've got, a few folks on the line who I know are entrepreneurs. And if there's someone who's listening right now who is interested in starting their own business, what advice would you give them? And how would you recommend, they go about making it work?
Definitely. Well, there's a few things. So one thing, if you're currently at a job that, you're working at full time and you think you might want to leave that job to start a business, my advice would be to make sure that you have an emergency fund really stocked up. I mean, that's advice I would give people at any time. It's always good to have an emergency fund for emergencies like the time we're in now. COVID has set a lot of people back, but you never know what could happen. But with that, building up that emergency fund so that you can, for at least 6 months, feel comfortable that if you don't bring in enough money to cover your expenses, that you still have money set aside. I think, I think a misconception about starting a business is that you're just going to get up and running right away and have a bunch of customers. I mean, I feel really fortunate. I've had quite a few clients since I started, but it's definitely not to the level where I'm making the same as I was in my previous job. I know I'll get there, but it's not going to happen right away. So having that safety net is really important. I think, if you want to start your business and you don't have that option, there's definitely other options out there, to get funding. But I think, especially for a consulting business, it's not very expensive. The overhead isn't too much to run it. So I was able to break even pretty quickly. But it is something to think about, where you're maybe not going to get up to the point you were when you were working for another company. And insurance is another thing to think about, as when you're working for yourself, you don't have a company that's providing your health insurance. So if you, don't have a spouse that's gonna, a spouse or parents that can provide that for you, then you have to think about those extra costs. And so for me, I think for anyone wanting to start a business, it's really about the planning, and planning ahead is super important. I think thinking about where you want to be in a year and even several years ahead is an important thing to think about. And, how long are you willing, if you are struggling at first, how long are you willing to struggle before you decide, okay, I don't want to do this anymore? It's not going to come all at once. So that's, I think, and especially if you're someone like me, I want to be just up and running, it's hard to have that patience. I know it's going to come and I have the confidence, but it's definitely where you start to say, why can't I just have all the customers right now? Why can't I just have it immediately, but it doesn't. And that's just not how business works. You need to build up what you're doing and get people to trust you and get referrals, things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, it's about building your brand, right? And like
yeah.
you said, patience and authenticity will attract the right customer, but it will take some time. We do have another question from the audience, from Ryan. When considering being a business owner, what skill sets did you wish you took advantage of that could have sped up your execution and experience as a business owner?
So is the question like maybe things I didn't do when I was working for other companies that I wish I would have learned before starting?
Yeah, so more so the skill sets that you already have that you didn't necessarily lean into initially, that maybe if you did, would have sort of sped up your execution and experience as a business owner. If there was there any one skill now that you think back on it, had I leaned into that a bit earlier, that would have been helpful.
I think the thing that I was hesitant to do, and I think this is really common, is things like this. So getting on video more often, and it's not just webinars, also going on Facebook Live, videos on Instagram, all of those things. I do that some, and part of it is it's a little bit time consuming to plan that all out, do the video, have a script. I like to have a script. I like to be prepared. And I think if I would have done that a little bit more, my plan was really to do that more during my launch, and I didn't do it as much as I wanted to. And, part of starting this is also trying to be not too hard on myself. So when I knew I wasn't doing it as much as I thought I should be, then I tried to say, well, but I'm also doing all these other things. And so trying not to give myself too hard of a time, because I, like many people, can be my worst critic. So as much as I think like I should have done that a little bit more early on, I also, like I said, I don't think I would go back and change anything. I think everything kind of fell into place the way it did for a reason. And, I will continue to use video in the future. And it's just a matter of getting more comfortable hopping on a live, or, even putting together, like editing videos was something I had to teach myself. And so that every time I go in and try to do it, it takes a little bit of time to refresh myself. But yeah, video is probably the biggest thing that I feel like I should do more of.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That is definitely a goal for myself this year. I 100% think that that's something that we're just seeing a lot more of, in the space, and it seems to be just another medium to kind of interact with people at a different level, right? The static, just text based messages, are, slowly being outperformed by, the video messages. So definitely being more comfortable and confident in front of the camera is definitely going to be, key. And I think that that's at least for me, a good goal for 2021. And, I will be taking some tips and tricks from you along the way as well. So, as we're coming up on the end of the hour, just really wanting to, ask, what are some of the programs and offerings or events that you've got going on that we can really expect from WorkVision Consulting in the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, so I'm building out several things. I'm working on a diversity, equity, and inclusion lifecycle audit, which is going to be a free tool that I'll share in the next month or so, where companies can use that to ask specific questions and see where they are at each stage of the employee lifecycle in relationship to DE&I. So that'll be coming. Also, next week, I have a webinar on Thursday that is going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that one's called She Works Hard for the Money. That's going to be about pay equity audits. So I'm going to talk about the history of pay equity, what we're seeing now around the legislation. And then I'm also going to walk through what are the steps that companies can take to do a pay equity audit. So I'm really excited about that. And I hope you all, if you're interested at all in pay equity, please join me for that next week. And if you can't make it at that time, please register and I'll send you the recording. Another webinar that will be coming up, I haven't launched this yet or announced it, but I will be doing a panel with several people who have experience in HR and recruiting, and we'll be talking about dismantling the hiring process. So looking at what companies are doing now and what they're not doing right and how we can fix it. So really looking at what is the best way to have an equitable hiring process. And that'll be, I'm really excited to just talk to a bunch of experts about that who have a lot of experience in that area. So those are kind of the main things. I'm also, taking on new clients. So I'm, looking at talking to a lot of potential clients about work for them. But if you or your company might be interested in working with me, please feel free to reach out, info@workvisionconsulting.com.
Awesome. Well, those are all very exciting things that you've got coming down the pipeline. So we'll definitely be looking out and excited to, help with marketing for your next event, posting on the social media page. But definitely really interesting stuff. And thank you so much for taking the time today to meet with us. I think we've answered all of the questions from the audience, but if you do have additional questions, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. But definitely appreciate everyone taking the time today to join and hear about WorkVision Consulting and how you can launch a business and how to build a brand. And that, to Jocelyn's point, it's a continuous process. It's not a one and done. It's something that you really do have to invest your time in and be able to, figure out what works for your business, what works for your market. So again, thanks so much. I really hope you appreciated the content.
Yeah, thank you. And definitely, follow on Instagram. I'll let you also, say where your company is. But for me, WorkVision Consulting on LinkedIn, WorkVision_consulting on Instagram, and then also WorkVision Consulting on Facebook. So look us up and check out all the content.
Yeah, and you can find me at betterinsightconsulting.com. And just as a final plug, I am actually launching one of my series, my leadership series, Lead the Way Positively, starting on Saturday, March 6th. So this will be my quarterly installment. So I really am excited about the next series that's going to be kicking off. So I'll be sharing some content about that as well. So, and like you, definitely participating in a few other activities. I'm on a few panels coming up with stellar women, building a community of women in the legal technology space. So that's something that I'm really excited about. That we'll really be focusing on the work that I've been doing with Better Insight and how to weave that into the tech space. As well as a panel for my undergrad where there's a women leadership conference. And so I'll be talking about, Better Insight and some of the leadership principles that can be applied, especially at the undergrad level. So really excited for all the things that we're both doing. Definitely looking forward to continuing the conversation and both of our organizations continuing to grow. So thanks everyone for the time, for joining the webinar today. We really appreciate it. You will receive an email with a link. So for those who may have joined late or had to hop off early or want to share the content with others, definitely utilize that link that we'll be sharing with you later.